Hi. So I want to talk about something very important. I was watching a video about, a Puerto Rican lady who had a problem with the term black owned businesses. And she was like, she didn't understand. She didn't say it in a way to mean that she needs to be educated. It's like she's tired of hearing about black owned businesses or the statement in itself, like you don't support somebody because of the color of their skin. You just look at the product. And I liked the few I watched this from Dumebilia on YouTube, by the way, so you can go check that out there. So because I'm sure there are probably many stitches to that particular video, but the ones that she picked I think were very, very educative. um and as she was talking about, sharing her own opinion at the end of the stitches, she talked about something that I said, let me expatiate on this. And it's acting surprised, right? So I want to call this the culture of acting surprised. Now, the culture of acting surprised happens across board everywhere. You see people say things that you expect, and we all know that they know. Even they know, but they pretend like they don't know. So it's like the culture of acting surprised, to water down or simplify things that are would not become less complicated because you say they're not. You understand? Now, there are so many things when it comes to um acting surprised. Like there's so many places, so many situations where people act surprised. And I will start with that of um shall we say, let me see. There's so many places I can start from. I can start from women. I can start from, the issue of feminism, the reason why some women don't want to get married, the reason why some women don't want to have children, and we all acting surprised. The reason why labels are made. And frankly speaking, if we're talking about getting tired, I, for one, I am tired of everybody else using something, but when a black person uses it, it's a problem. Everybody, we're learning history, we're pronouncing names, we're learning history of every other person, we're learning and pronouncing, especially black people. We do our best to pronounce other people's names correctly, no matter how tongue twisting, complicated, and it looks. In fact, we pronounce, when it comes to most cultures, we are the ones who pronounce other people's names best, the most. We learn how to, because for us as black people, black names are identity. They are part of your identity. We don't just name names. I mean, for some cultures maybe names are not that important for them, but for black people, especially if you're African, we have this statement in southwest Nigeria, like ilela nwo kato somo loruko. What that means is that we look at the pedigree of the family. We look at the situation the family is in or was in when a child was born, the circumstances surrounding the birth of the child. We look at where the parents were at when the child was born. We look at where the family was at when the child was born. So sometimes you hear a name Omolaja, which means, oh dear, that is going to be long explaining. What that means is a child separates, I will just interpret it literally, like a child separates fight. And when we say omolaja, when you name a child separates fight, or like um yeah, a child separates fights, literally. But when we're going to explain it properly in English, it means a child born that, you know, caused strife to cease or caused a fight or an argument or a quarrel to cease. That is like the when we're going to interpret it properly in English, right? So you they named their children, their people named that because maybe their parents were having issues and it was as if they were going to go their separate ways, or maybe two families were fighting, like they were almost at each other's or one another's throat. From the side of the husband and from the side of the wife. Maybe it was a Romeo and Juliet situation where both families just hated each other's guts. You understand? And then one of them from each family decided to get married or decided to get together, and it was an issue. Nobody, in fact, they were on their own. There were threats to them as a couple, and there were threats to both their families. Both families were threatening each other and all of that. And then the fruit of their love showed up. They had a child. And then everybody calmed down and said, you know what? There is a baby here, and the baby is innocent. We cannot continue doing this. We need to resolve our issues. At least try to, broker peace, or try to like have a treaty of some sort, where we find what we have in common. And this child is what we do have in common. However, whether we like each other or not, we have this child in common. And for this child to have a future, let's just suspend all hostilities. And they did. And they all came together. They had a big party. And look, if you are African or Nigerian, you know that naming ceremonies are big deals. They are ceremonies. You understand? It was just recently that we added baby shower to the ceremony because, of course, we always find an excuse to do ceremonies in Nigeria. So adding baby shower was just it for us as well. But before, the baby shower was done when on the day they are naming the child. That is when they do the baby shower. That is when you bring gifts. That is when you bring mostly monetary gifts. When you have a child, people bring monetary gifts most of the time. But I guess people now began to see that it also makes sense to actually do a baby shower because, well, not everybody would have time to come for the naming ceremony, for one. And two, it also reduces it also happens that sometimes naming ceremonies, they have a naming, but it doesn't become a big ceremony. It's just maybe the few family members, the elders most especially, those who will name the child and bless the child, the religious leaders of the religious leaders of the parents' religion, the elders of the family, that the ones who will come and bless the child and officially, give the child the names that the child will be called. So because the baby shower is for everybody, like anybody who is a friend of the family would come and bring their gifts. So the naming ceremony is now becomes a separate one, less um ceremonial, let's put it that way. Less ceremonial but more cultural, as the case may be. So for us, I'm just telling you, giving you the background of how important names are, right? Names are so important to us. We don't just take a name and say, oh, this name sounds cute, and then we just pin it on a child. No, the name the name is always so heavy. A lot of times it has meaning, not just meaning in itself, but meaning to the family, right? Sometimes a name is picked by an elder and they practically beg that, please let this name be the name that you be calling this child. So that's why it's in African cultures, there is no one name. You don't have two names. You have two official names, but when it comes to your culture, you have like at least 10 names, at least 10 names, because of how, one word, because one word obviously is not enough to describe everything that has come together to um that point where that child was born, right? It's a journey. So to having a child is a journey. It's not just Obviously, the child didn't drop from the sky. You understand what I'm saying? There were circumstances that brought the parents together and what they experienced in life. And so that child coming in is like, wow, I have been through something, and here is this gift to compensate me or something, to remind me of the journey I started with the father or the mother of this child. And so one word is not enough to describe a journey or to describe a journey, period. One word is not enough. So that's why you have in a person, I can't remember how many names I have, but I know there are about 10 of them. I can't remember all the names though. Though it's written somewhere very safe, but I can't remember all the names, right? But reading those names gave me an idea that I came as a, like, my coming was something that was worth celebrating. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So names are important, and the Bible also signifies that in Hebrew culture, that they name names as well based on more or less the same things, right? So we do not bungle names. Names are important to us. And that's why, as much as many of us, we try to like ignore or the fact that our names have been mispronounced. It's not proper. We will not mispronounce names unless, of course, we didn't know and we thought that is how it's pronounced. But the moment we are corrected and said, no, this is how to really pronounce that name, we change and we learn to pronounce it properly. And sometimes those are that would be like the only name the only thing we know how to pronounce in that culture. Like me, for example, the only things I know, except maybe for a few words, how to, but names mostly are the ones that you know how to pronounce reasonably well in most cultures, Indian, Chinese, and it's because I watch, some of their serials and all. So I get to learn, and I like the fact that when I pronounce a name, I pronounce it properly. And it's the same thing with language, so we don't just go there and start, mispronouncing things. But some others don't seem to care. And the culture of acting surprised now comes in. We pronounce your names well, the names of your businesses and all. We pronounce them properly as they ought to be, as much as they are not even related to our own culture. But then when it comes to our names, or when it comes to things we name as Black people, all of a sudden it becomes a political issue. All of a sudden it becomes a racism issue. All of a sudden you're tired. I could decide to bungle the word Puerto Rico if I wanted to. That's probably the only thing I know how to pronounce in that entire country. Probably. If you ask me to speak the language, I don't even know what the language is there. Funny. I don't know what the language is there. But I pronounce it probably because I heard it and like, oh, this is the proper way of pronouncing it, Puerto Rico. I can decide to, but I can't do that because culturally we're taught to be respectful. And we see it as disrespect when you mispronounce something. Or you begin to question why it is called so. Hello? And then we're like, oh wow, why is this such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because I'm not bungling your name. I'm not mispronouncing your name, for example. And whatever it is you call yours, even if I'm confused, I ask questions respectfully. Why is this thing called this way? Why is that thing called that way? I'm very respectful about it. And it's the same thing with a lot of Black people. But when it comes to our turn, all of a sudden it becomes an issue. People act surprised when it comes to history. When it comes to Black history, they act surprised. But when it comes to other people's history, it's normal to learn. Reparations. Nobody has a problem. Nobody has had a problem with reparations until it became reparations for Black people. That was when it became a problem. I don't think there is any culture that has suffered loss in the hands of another that has not been paid back one way or the other. Whether it was complete or not is another conversation, but they had been paid back in a way. And it was stated clearly that they are paying this back because of what happened when. Because of what has happened, this is like the little thing they can pay back as compensation. It was not a problem then. It was a norm. But then it became Black people and it was a problem. And I think the reason why people always have problems with when Black people do things is because in their heads, they see Black people as beneath them. They either see Black people as beneath them or they see Black people as a threat to them. Or even worse, they see Black people as both. As confusing as that sounds, yeah, they see Black people as both a threat and beneath them. And so they're like, when Black people own things, they get agitated. Why should you own something? Why should you? Honey, I didn't ask you. And you have a situation where Black people get sabotaged a lot. And it looks like, a lot of people never grow up, by the way. Because so many things that happens in the playground, kindergarten playgrounds, primary schools, whatever it is you call primary school in your country, a lot of those things that happen in those schools, on the playground, in the playing field, where someone would trip somebody else and then act innocent. And the person who has been tripped, no, sometimes they don't even know that they know someone tripped them, but they don't even know the person who did it. Because that person quickly, but somebody sees it. But that person may not say anything because they don't want to be the next to be bullied. So they keep quiet. At least one hopes they keep quiet. But sometimes some of them, when the person who has been tripped now begins to protest or retaliate or respond, they now begin to say things like, "Well, why would you think that somebody tripped you? Maybe you stumbled. Why is it that every time you why is it that every time you trip, you say you don't think that maybe you stumbled? Well, because we're taught to also walk. As Black people, we're taught a lot of things. And that's why I believe that Africa is still the cradle of civilization, is where civilization came from. We're taught how to walk. If you walk in a way that is not, your mother is going to call you out, like, why would you walk like that? Now lift your foot and walk properly. If you walk in like a soldier, they say, why are you walking like a soldier? You're a woman. Walk properly until you get it right. We're taught how to walk. There is hardly anything we do. We even taught how to talk. I remember I was talking to my mom like a few days back, and she was like, "You can't keep talking like this." I'm like what? You're always gesticulate. Brr. Gest- when you are talking and your hands are everywhere and your eyebrows are all over the place. Apparently, she wants me to talk without even moving my mouth. And I was like, Mom, I'm sorry, but maybe if I was younger, this might work, but I am an adult now. I'm not going to suppress me, moving my hands to in tandem with what I am saying is me expressing myself. We're taught how to talk. We're taught to not change our expression when we are talking. We're taught how to laugh. There is a proper way to laugh. I can assure you, the way I laugh is not considered in my household the normal way to laugh. You have to laugh. There's a way to laugh. We're taught all that. We're taught all of that. There is a proper way to do everything. That's how we are raised as Black people. No matter, I've noticed in the since the internet became a thing for everybody, I realized that we Black people, we have so much in common when it comes to culture, because we talk about, oh, in my household this is what we're doing. I'm like, what? The other person from another continent, we go, really? You do that? Wow. That's what we do here too. Like, wow. We're like, really? Oh, wow. Before, we used to think it was a Black people thing for us to do things a certain way, or an African thing. Now we realize it's a Black people thing. We do our best. We're taught to do things properly. Do we always do things properly? No, but we were taught to. Unlike some people that are taught to sabotage other people, to mispronounce other people's names, and to have a problem with other people's religion, have a problem with other people's history, have a problem with other people's name. Because some people don't want to pronounce your name as a Black person, they'll say, "Do you have an English name?" Why the heck should I have an English name? I am grateful I don't have an English name, because that would be so bad. I'm glad I don't have an English name, and I don't wish to have an English name. In fact, I look forward to that time, and I'm going to start. In fact, I'm starting a YouTube channel where I'm just going to be speaking my mother tongue alone. I'm just going to be speaking my mother tongue alone, because I'm very, very passionate about the culture that God has placed me in. God placed me there for a reason. And I'm not going to ignore that and be using other people's culture. Why I ignore mine? It doesn't make sense. Like, English is not it's not God's language or something where I must speak English. No, every language created by God. So if every language is created by God, then I'm going to be using my own language more. At least try to. The excuse we give as Black people for speaking English, especially Africans, is that so that other people will understand. We always do that. We always bend over backwards to make other people comfortable. The question is, who is bending over backwards to make us as Black people comfortable? Because the thing is, when you keep doing, I can tell you that from experience, when you keep doing things for people that nobody else is doing for you, you find yourself at a loss. You do things for people. People benefit from the same things you do. But then when you're not benefiting from it, they act surprised. I was reading the comments of Dumebi Leah on this issue of Black-owned businesses. And somebody was saying it's amazing how people act surprised when, like they benefit from what Black people fought for. And then when Black people say things like Black-owned, these same people who benefited from it, like something about minorities acts in business, where they give you some, because you're a minority, you're considered a minority. And I don't like that word. I am so not a minority, but I understand that if you have to use that word to get what your own rightful share of the national cake, then use it. Except it's not even that. It's not even working for Black people. Every other person is benefiting from it. Every other culture is benefiting from it. But Black people. It's like sometimes I feel like they use Black people to fight their battles, wherever they are. But when it comes to the benefits, you almost have to fight for it, even though you fought for it. You fought for it already. You have to even fight to even get it again. How? I submit, though, that as a person of color, if you don't have a, shall we say, a culture where you come from that has its own language, try and learn a look. There are several languages in Africa. Several languages in Africa. You can choose one. At least you are learning a language. Unlike, I'm not saying don't learn French or German or Chinese, but please, while you are learning all those languages, learn one language from people that look like you. It helps. Look at several. You have so many picks. Pick one. Pick one. And maybe let Google Translate do the work where they translate what you say. I mean, I see people on YouTube, on social media, type in their own language. I'm like, why aren't Nigerians typing in Igbo? Well, some of them do. Type in Yoruba, type, some of them do. But we don't do it as often as other people do. We type in English because I think we just like to feel like it's an achievement for me to be able to speak and write in English. I don't know about that. All right, I'll just stop there for now and then continue about the culture of acting surprised next time. If each one can reach one, then each one can teach one what a better world will have. Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, you're your brother and your sister's keeper. So show love just because. And this is a quote by Chaz B. That's Charles Chukwuma Bruce of blessed memory. And in the scriptures, we're told that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And that they that know their God, they shall be strong and they shall do exploits. And guard your hearts with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. Keep yourself at peace.